Because the EcoDiesel is about to go out, I thought it would be fitting to do a comparison with a Ram 1500 and Jeep Gladiator to see just how different the fuel economy is. Now obviously these are two different vehicles. Their aerodynamics are totally different, and quite honestly I really do believe that like this is an important test for someone who might be considering a Ram but haven't really thought about a Jeep Gladiator or vice versa. So right now this is the only time we're gonna get this engine because they are done. So if you want one, you better jump out here quickly. Special shout out to Larry H. Miller, Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram here in Sandy, Utah, for allowing me to do this video. And if you are in the market, they have a ton of inventory and they probably are discounting these cars right now. Let's go ahead and start driving the, man, which one do I want to drive first? I don't even know. Let's try the Jeep first. The Jeep should be a little bit more fun, and we'll set the stage with this one. Alrighty, so one thing I always hate about Jeeps, especially the soft tops, is whenever I get inside of one, I always look to see if there's windows down because you can hear all the road noise. So that's one thing I never really cared for about these. But overall, this interior has always been my favorite of all Jeep generations, obviously because it's the newest, right? But still, this interior, it was done well. Jeep really did outdo themselves. Now I have to redo the fuel economy for the computer here, so let me just, I'm going to stop in the same spot here. I'm going to stop next to this Ram truck here, and then we will go ahead and reconvene. So let's do a trip 1, or trip A as they call it. So trip A, reset, here we go. Now this does have stop start and all those features, but here's where the Jeep's gonna really get hurt today. Tires and aerodynamics. This thing is not for fuel economy, so that's why I want to do this test. That truck is kind of set up for fuel economy because of tires, things like that. And that Ram actually has a 392 rear. This Jeep has a 373. It comes standard with a 410, but because of the diesel, they give it a higher gear at 373. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get on the highway for about 5 or so minutes, and then we'll turn around, come back, and then we'll see where we end off at. So I'm gonna make a confession. I don't like driving Jeeps for test drives because of this windshield. This windshield is notorious for getting cracked because it's straight up, so the rocks don't get a chance to really scoop over. And quite honestly, we're gonna try to take it easy today. But so far, this EcoDiesel is showing out. So I am gonna show you guys some acceleration at some point on this drive. So stay tuned for that. Then we'll kind of compare with that Ram 1500. But as you're just driving normally, you can't really tell that this has a diesel. Like, it seems just like a regular normal V6 gas engine. Like, that's what I think about when I drive this thing. So you know you're driving a diesel when you look at the fuel economy. Like, even at these low speeds, this is pretty darn good. Now if you are planning to tow with the Gladiator, you're probably going to want to skip this option because this truck does not have a lot of payload. So here's the gross axle weight rating up front. It's going to be 3,400 pounds. The rear is 3,750 pounds. And all in, it has a gross fuel weight rating of 6,450 pounds, which gives it only a payload of 1,071 pounds. I just noticed that I forgot to put the latch back on the roof on this side. I did take the roof off, and I will say that that's probably one of the biggest selling points for people with this truck. Like, you can take your top off at will, and it's super easy to do. You can literally just undo these hooks, pop it up, and then fold it back. Done. And I think the sides of the backs come off here too. They unzip, and yeah, this is so much fun, especially being out here in Utah. You can take it out to Moab and go off-road with it. But when you get back to civilization, you are reminded how loud this thing is. Whoa! Yeah, this would be a third vehicle for me. If I ever got one, it would be a third vehicle. Or I'd get the hardtop. The hardtop is so much better. Although, it's so much harder to take off the top. So, you do get that trade-off. But again, this is pretty comfortable. these seats don't go down or go back nearly as much as I need. And you do have a telescoping steering wheel. And yeah, I mean, this thing is pretty loaded. Like, it has heated seats, dual climate control. I mean, it's a nice truck for the money. I mean, it's expensive, but if you don't really plan on towing anything much more than 5,000 pounds, I would say much more than 4,000 pounds, this is the perfect setup for somebody. One thing about the Gladiator that I'm surprised by is it handles pretty darn good on the road. Like, I'm going about 65 miles an hour, and I don't really feel that this thing is like clumsy. Like, if I were to make an abrupt lane change, like you feel a little bit of sway, but it's not bad. And it is kind of windy today, kind of. And we're getting already close to 20 mpg. And I want to make sure I turn the camera on around the same time when I drive the Ram, because that'll really be a good telltale. But we're going to get to the midpoint, so I'll definitely show you guys the fuel economy right there. But so far so good. Like, I'm happy with 20 miles to the gallon. Like, we did a little bit of city driving. Now we're doing some highway, and we're going to stop and then do some acceleration. So that's a nice trip overall. I mean, we just crossed over 20 mpg. I'm running at, what is that? I'm running at 2,000, actually like 1,900 RPMs right now at 75 miles an hour. That is not bad at all. 8-speed transmission. So if I drop down to about 70, we're probably around about 1,850 RPM. So overall, I would like to see a 10-speed at some point, but we're not going to see it behind this diesel ever. The Jeep Gladiator does have the same EcoDiesel as the Ram. However, the power outputs are different. So this is going to be good for 260 horsepower, 442 pound-feet of torque, 8-speed transmission, and it has the 8 HP 75 8-speed, which is a pretty robust transmission. And I wish that this truck had maybe a little bit higher GWR by like 500 pounds, so it could maybe handle a little bit more capacity for towing a trailer. But this does have a low payload, which is something you're going to have to really look at if you are looking at a Jeep Gladiator. Alrighty, so this will be the midpoint. Hopefully you guys remember this bridge here. So we're at 21.3 mpg. Let's see if the start comes on. So nope, it did not come on, and it's pretty warmed up at this point too. But next thing I want to show you guys here is the acceleration, because that's going to be very important for you guys. You know what? Let's just go ahead and do it now. I'm doing here. So I'm going 40, 45, go. This is definitely slow from 45 to 75. I would like to do it from 0, but there's no place for me to really do it at safely. So whenever I find an area closer to where I'm at, I'll try to maybe do some 0 to 60 tests, but for now, I just have to do it from like a rolling start. But it's a dog for sure. And I mean, really, that's because you are pretty much in that area where you need that horsepower, and this doesn't have the horsepower that it needs to really accelerate fast. But nevertheless, from 0 to about 40, this bad boy will move. But we're going to be back at the dealership here in a second, and then we'll end off with fuel economy, okay? We're pulling back in now, and we're not doing too bad on the MPGs either. I mean, I'm actually really happy with this. Look at that, 23 miles to the gallon. That is not bad. So we're gonna pretty much end off right next to this truck. Hopefully this truck does not move, because this is our starting and stopping point. All right, so we were just at 23 mpg driving 15.5 miles. I was running about 80 miles an hour on the last leg of the trip, because the speed limit is kind of high out here in Utah. And that was a 20-minute trip. So let's go ahead and jump inside the Ram, and let's see how that truck will do for fuel mileage. Now this doesn't have as much gas in it, so I am like kind of running on fumes here, but it says I have 30 miles till empty, which means I have at least 3 gallons in there, so we should be good. But let's go ahead and stop next to the Fastenal truck. And I'm gonna go ahead and reset trip A. And let's get down the road. Now this test should be pretty fun because this truck has a 392 rear axle, which is a low gear and the lowest gear you can get for the Ram half tons. And this is considered max tow. So that should affect the fuel economy a little bit. All right, we're about to get on the highway now. And we're at 14. I think the Gladiator is about 15 about where we are here. And what else? 56 degrees outside. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier in the video. So this is a really warm day. Like, it's actually really hot outside today. I took my coat off, and these diesels should work at their peak for fuel economy. Now, unfortunately, the wind is what's gonna hurt us, but I'm gonna pause here for a second because I want to show you guys the RPMs at about 70 miles an hour. And we're gonna hop off this road to get on another road so we can you know, kind of beat some of this traffic here. But we're gonna do the same trips for both trucks. So don't worry, we're gonna keep it pretty identical for the most part. So here are the numbers for the Ram. 3,900 pound axle up front. The rear is 4,100 pounds. 7,200 pound GVWR. So you're gonna have a higher GVWR because of the diesel powertrain. And then here's your payload. So this truck weighs in about 5,589 pounds. That's the curb weight right here for it. For what you get in the Gladiator, you do get a little bit more for the money. Like, that was a $65,000 Jeep, right? And this is like a $60,000 pickup. And you have cloth seats, you have really not a lot of frills. I mean, well, it has heated seats, things like that. But this doesn't have that nice feel that the Jeep had. However, I would prefer this drive over that Jeep. This is so much more comfortable. It's quieter. The tires in the Jeep, I didn't mention it, the tires weren't that loud, but that soft top roof really does create a lot of noise. And I did turn the radio on. It helped a little bit. But this is so much more comfortable. This is more me, I would say. And if you want something a little bit more aggressive, you do have the Rebel, and that will give you more of that off-road oriented setup versus this more base model truck. Something else to consider, the diesel is more quieter in this Ram compared to that Jeep. And that's not a surprise because you don't have as much fender as this does, basically. Like, there's a little bit more insulation probably. The firewall is probably a little bit bigger. But yeah, I don't hear the diesel at all in this truck. Like, I hear even the wind noise more so. Like I said, it's a windy day today, so the fuel economy is gonna suffer. So this is about where I believe I showed you guys the fuel mileage. And yeah, we're at 20 mpg, so we're a little bit better, I think, than where the Jeep was. But when we get to the midpoint, when I do my U-turn, I'll show you guys one more time. But overall, this truck, it basically has, I call them car tires because, you know, normally these tires are built for like just more fuel economy because they're not really built for towing and doing a lot of hauling. They're really for doing stuff like this. Like, if you need a truck to do a little bit of hauling on the weekends every once in a while, but you do a lot of highway driving, that's what these diesels are for, and they give you those tires on this because of it. Now, the EcoDiesel in the Ram does have more torque than the Gladiator does. So this is going to be good for 260 horsepower, which it matches the Gladiator, but it's going to have 480 pound-feet of torque. So that's where this truck is going to really come in handy for towing. And despite the extra power, this truck does still get better fuel economy, but that's a lot to do with aerodynamics and tires, which you're going to probably hear a lot in this video. But it's going to be connected to an 8 HP 75 transmission, just like the Gladiator. And again, that is a good transmission. It's in the HD segment, so I'm glad that they use it in both of these trucks behind the diesel. As far as the RPMs go, I'm going to get up to about 75 here for a little bit, because that's about how fast I was going earlier. So I'm a little bit over 2,000 RPM, so let me go back down to 70. And I believe I was like a little bit under, yeah, so it's about the same. Granted, the rear ends are a little bit different. It's about the same for the RPMs. Even at 70 miles an hour, I'm slightly under 90. So if I go down to 65, actually 65 puts me at about 1700 RPMs. I believe that's about 1700 when I was at 65. Let me go back down a little bit. Yeah, that puts me like right at about 1700 RPMs or 1800 RPMs. That's probably what that is, 1800 RPMs. So yeah, that's not bad. It's not bad at all. Alrighty, we are at the midpoint. And look what's in front of us, Ram Rebel. That's the truck I wanted to do with the diesel, but they didn't have a diesel. And we're at 22.6, 7.3 miles driven. Not bad. So we are doing better than the Gladiator now. So, you know, those meaty tires with the way the front end set up, you're not gonna get the great fuel economy that you would, you know, compared to a truck like this. And again, the tires are gonna really have a big effect on that. So let's go ahead and accelerate. You ready for this? So we're doing 45 and go. That was about the same as the Gladiator. Not much different. This truck is probably a little bit heavier, and yeah, it has more power well, it has more torque. I should say it doesn't have more horsepower. It has more torque. So the horsepower doesn't change, which means the acceleration is not going to be much different. But I will say, off the line, I bet you this truck would feel a little bit stronger, although the weight difference would probably affect it. But I don't know, that Gladiator does have taller tires. It does have higher gearing compared to this. So I don't know guys, like this is an interesting test in my head. I'm trying to like figure it all out, but we know the Ram's gonna win this. I think I don't know, we're not back yet though, so we'll have to wait and see. Now, something to consider is this is a different route that I have done from the last time I did a fuel economy run with the EcoDiesel, and this truck got pretty close to the same. So at 25.7, we're not back yet. I have to stop at the Fastenal truck, so we're gonna stop there, and then that will end this video. So right here, we're gonna stop right here, and we are at 25.6, 17:55 is the time. So we drove a little bit faster actually on this timer too. So we did do better than the EcoDiesel and the Gladiator, which is kind of not a surprise. But 15.4 miles driven. I don't remember what it was in the Gladiator, but the Gladiator does have taller tires. Would that affect the... Actually, no, it would have less mileage. I think it was about the same though. But I'll check here in a second. So that is pretty much it, guys. So unfortunately the Gladiator did come out short in terms of fuel economy, but still really good for this type of pickup. The Ram 25.6, that's pretty consistent, and I was driving at about 75-80 miles an hour in some cases. And I do think that there is something that you can put between the bumper and the fender here that might help a little bit with fuel economy. But nevertheless, these are some bigger tires, they're more aggressive, so you're gonna get a little bit less fuel economy because of that. But let me just show you guys one last thing and we'll end off the video. Check out how much longer the Ram truck is too. Like, the cab of the Gladiator is definitely a little bit smaller, and then the bed size, they're about the same size bed, but the cab of the Ram is so big. Like, you have way more comfort in that second row versus the Gladiator, which I definitely would like to prefer for my kids because they're going to get pretty big in a couple years here. So nevertheless, like I said, it's something to consider too. But special shout out again to Larry H. Miller here in Sandy, Utah, Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, Ram. Be sure to let them know you saw the video if you do decide to buy, and I'll see you guys in the next video.